couple things about Dropbox. There is a theme, and you've done this really interestingly, coming at it from the, let's call it the sales ops angle first, and then jumping into manage these teams, which some of the best operators I know from a sales and marketing perspective have come from the ops side. I look at them as like the yin to my yang. Like they speak a beautiful language, and I want to hear all of it. So as you're doing that, you're building things from scratch, and you are building at one phase at Dropbox, and you go through a lot of different phases of growth in your international expansion playbook. You're also going through phases you've been in before at Asana, and planning for phases that are things you've seen before and things you know a lot about. So let's talk about your international expansion playbook. As you're going through phase by phase, and one, making the decision as to whether or not you should do it in the first place, expanding outside of, let's call it the US for now, into other markets. And then two, once you decide, yes, through that evaluation process, you want to go about doing it, what's your step-by-step process you're going through in order to expand internationally? You can use the Dropbox example or the Asana example, or both if you just want to say, hey, this is what we did then and this is what we did then. But either way, what's your phase by phase and step-by-step approach as you're executing on this expansion playbook?
So I think the first is understanding that international operations is not adding international operations is honestly from management overhead perspective. It's like the minute you go international, for every new region and office you add is equivalent to adding 2. And the next one you add is like equivalent to adding 3. There's a complexity. The overhead is so much more, and sophistication is so much greater. And not to say it's not worth it, right? Obviously, I do it, but it's something that I think you need to be really, really honest with yourself, with your teams, on like whether and when are you ready for that. So, because honestly, one of the things that I think about is most companies go international too late, right? And so you want to go fast, but you got to make sure you commit. So step one, before you commit 100%, what you can do is just do just play the digital game. Localize your product, localize your ads, localize your website. And I would say probably even in that order. So again, it depends on what product you have, right? But if you have a user-facing product, then I think it's true. I think the product, it starts with the product, because in many countries you may have 1 or 2 people who are very comfortable with English, but the rest of the team may not be. You're not going to get a good adoption that way. So I think that's important. Localize your product as soon as you feel like you have, as long as you feel like you have enough confidence that it's worth the engineering investment, because it's a big investment. So there's a certain threshold where you're going to start seeing, oh wow, you know what, like whether it's like tickets that come in asking for a language or a community, like you'll get that ask. Then maybe like French and Spanish, the website, that's an obvious one. But what's interesting is like you can get some good lift from just localizing the ads, that you're in Dutch or Japanese, and it points to an English website. You're still going to get some incremental dollars there. So play the digital game, and then at some point, and you have to come up with a framework. And it differs company to company. You don't have to be that scientific, but like, at what point do you feel like you're ready to go open an additional office? And almost always, you'll see English-speaking markets adopt first. And UK, Australia, are the next 2. Canada, large markets that for many reasons, and we're not gonna have enough time to talk about them, but they usually are the next to adopt technologies. And so your next move, almost guaranteed, is going to be somewhere in Europe. And you pick between Dublin, Amsterdam, or London. And we can talk about which one, why, but it's going to be one of those 3, almost guaranteed. So set up your Europe hub. And then depending on the type of company, you can think about growing from there. So then the most obvious next markets would be France and Germany and in Europe. And so then you got to make that decision on like whether you want to service those markets in whichever hub you've picked, or you go even more local. And I think that depends on the type of company that you have. And then we talked about Australia. That makes a ton of sense already. Like the minute you're looking into the UK, if you have the bandwidth, you should look in the UK, Australia as well. I would think that the market demand would be equivalent in terms of timing there. And then Japan. Japan, people forget, it's the second largest IT market in the world. And they're early in their cloud adoption, but for SaaS companies, it's really starting to take off. And so Japan is a market where investing in early can pay off dividends like 3-4 years down the road. Japan is Slack's number 2 market. It's Salesforce's number 2 market. So, but it takes years to build up that market. And so you can start thinking about that. So in order to sequencing, like, I guess I've done it enough now to just know the sequence. Instead of like, when the first time I did this at Dropbox, it was like, okay, how many users do we need to see before we go green light here? How much revenue? How many businesses? How many domains do we want to see? And I don't know. I've traveled so much in the last couple of years. This is the order that I would go in.
You know what's really interesting about that is you mentioned you've looked at the data, and from the data side, it says to do this, this, and this. What you're saying is don't necessarily do the work that everyone else has done. This is in all likelihood the chronology of the markets that you will go into next. And that's really interesting. Don't redo all the work. Do not reinvent the wheel. I have 2 follow-up questions to that. One is, how do you know whether to hire even more local versus doing it from a regional hub? How do I know whether or not I should sell from Dublin or London or Amsterdam into France, Germany, Spain, Italy, some of the Nordic countries, etc., or hire local in that particular market? And by that I mean, when do I do it? And I'll ask the other question after that.
Yeah, to me, it all depends on your target audience. Who are you trying to go after, and how? All right. So if you're going after SMBs, this is primarily going to be an inside sales function. You're not showing up. It's not a relationship sale. Then there is so much value in centralizing to the last minute that you can, because you're still trying to figure it out. So Asana is small deals. We start with small teams and then we expand them. And we essentially have a big machine in Dublin. Why? Because the French rep who's learned some new insight, selling to mid-market SMB companies in France, can share with the Nordic rep, and those best practices really it makes it. When you're early in a region, you got to learn quickly, and you got to learn from the field. And that information transfer is so valuable. And then eventually you go the other way. You launch a new product. You got to enable the team. There's a lot of operational overhead to enabling lots of people in the field, versus you just fly into one office and you basically enable a team all at once. So huge advantage to centralizing. However, if your sales cycle and process relies a lot on relationship building, whether it's for bigger deals, whether it's a complex deal that relies on partners, then you need to go in the field. And that's where showing up makes a ton of sense. And what changes is the unit economics of that office, where if you open an office in Paris, now showing up at a mid-market office, opportunity of a 10K or 10K pound deal, normally is not going to justify a flight in, hotels, make it work. But now it's just down the street. I mean, not down the street, but now you can justify making that visit. And absolutely, I would think that increases the conversion rate. So there is benefit there too. But balancing operational overhead, learning earlier, I'm a big believer that you should hold off as long as you can. Because once you decentralize, there's no way you're going to centralize again. Well, you can, but it's very painful. You got to shut down offices. I mean, it's really painful. So you want to wait as long as possible.